The International Criminal Court's Office of the Prosecutor says it will respond to former President Duterte's request for an interim release. However, it did not confirm whether they support Duterte's plea or not. Duterte's lawyers earlier claimed the prosecution does not oppose the release under certain conditions. But lawyers on the side of the victims urged the ICC to reject the request, warning it could endanger those seeking justice for drug war abuses. To help us understand the legal implications of this development, we're joined by Attorney Joel Butuyan, an ICC-listed lawyer and chairperson of the Center for International Law. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Morning, Gretchen.
Okay. All right, first question. Is there truth to the claim of the defense that the prosecution has not opposed the request for an interim release under certain conditions? Have you heard of that, and what would those conditions be?
We have so far heard from the defense. We've not heard from the prosecution. And we've not heard from the victim's counsel, which is the OPCV at this point. And if you read thoroughly the submission of the defense counsel, I think they made a spin on whatever their talks with the prosecution has been. Because if you read deeply, the proper statement should be that the prosecution will agree provided certain conditions are met.
But under so your interpretation of this is that there has been no formal agreement yet done.
Yes, there's been no formal agreement because there are conditionalities imposed by the prosecution. In fact, there's an Annex A and there's an Annex B to the submission, to the request of the defense, which have been made confidential in the meantime. And these contain the conditions of both the prosecution and defense.
All right. But what is your take on that request for temporary liberty? I mean, what are the chances of that being granted given the history of the ICC?
There have been interim release granted by the ICC, but these past cases involve crimes which are not as serious as the crimes faced by Mr. Duterte. These are crimes on obstruction of justice, accused who were interfering with witnesses and victims, no? Not like Mr. Duterte is accused of crime against humanity. So this is going to be a first. And in previous cases, the interim release were either granted while trial was ongoing or when appeal was ongoing. In this case, trial has not been commenced yet. So this is going to be unprecedented, if ever.
Okay. So you, as one of the lawyers for the victims, would you oppose this interim release request by the former president, given that they have argued humanitarian grounds? He is 80 years old already and he will not escape and he will participate in the proceedings. I mean, what would you argue against that?
Gretchen, we are going to vigorously oppose this request for interim relief because the security of the victims and the witnesses are at stake. And in fact, even the participation of victims in the ICC proceedings is at stake. Even after the arrest of Mr. Duterte, so many victims still refuse to participate in the ICC proceedings because they know that powerful allies of Mr. Duterte are still in government, and they know the capacity for violence of his supporters. And on the issue of supposed humanitarian grounds, probably predicated on his health condition. Gretchen, less than 3 months ago, Mr. Duterte was able to travel to Hong Kong. No, he was able to speak in a rally for more than an hour, allegedly. And then when he came back, he was examined by doctors before he was flown to The Hague, and there was no serious medical condition that was found. So I think on the available evidence that we have so far, there is nothing urgent, there's nothing medical that would warrant an interim release, especially because he has access to medical facilities and medical personnel, in the ICC detention facilities.
Okay, talk to us about the timing of this request for an interim release. I remember at the start of the hearings, this was already being floated, the possibility of that being requested by the defense. Why do you think that has been requested now at this stage before the confirmation of charges has even begun? And usually, dun sa nabanggit yung kaso, no, yung kanina na obstruction of justice, is that request usually made at the beginning? Or mostly in the middle or at the end kapag medyo matagal-tagal na yung mga hearings na yan? Help us understand the strategy of the defense here as you see it.
I think from the very beginning, they've been wanting Mr. Duterte to be released. No? So this is really part of the plan, no? To have him released as soon as possible, and that's actually also very apparent, no, from the statements of his family members and his supporters who are rallying every day in The Hague. No? So this is really part of the plan. This is just the formalization of everything that they've been saying in the media and in interviews. No, so this is really not surprising. Now, with respect to the timing, as I said, this is really so early in the game because if you're going to base it and compare it with previous cases, the applications for interim release were made while trial was ongoing and when evidence for conviction would appear weak. No, so that's going to be also a ground that is invoked by the defense that the evidence is weak. And in other cases, the applications were made while appeal was already ongoing. No, so this is actually very early for them to file.
They have said that there is a third country that is willing to host the former president. Would you have any idea on what that country is?
It's really made confidential in their request, although they said that there is a country that's already agreed to host Mr. Duterte. But if we base it on past cases, it was Belgium that agreed to host an accused who was given interim release. No, and I would suppose that it's going to be a country that's adjacent to the Netherlands, because Mr. Duterte has to attend the trial. So I think it should be accessible to where he's going to be based if ever he's going to be granted interim release. So we're looking at the countries like which share common borders with the Netherlands, like France, Germany, and Belgium.
Okay. Hindi naman po pala ganun kalayuan, ano? Kasi nung pinag-uusapan po namin, baka, sabi namin, baka mas malapit na sa Pilipinas. Katulad po ng Japan, hindi po ganun yun na doon maghihiring kung nasaan siya. Kailangan po sa the Netherlands pa rin ang hearings.
The Netherlands yung hearing, Gretchen, well, there are exceptional circumstances when there's a request to hold the hearings outside of The Hague, but that's very exceptional. But in this case, it has already begun in The Hague, so I suppose it's going to be in The Hague. That's going to be the venue of the trial, and not Japan.
Okay. And speaking of conditions of the detainees, what would the main difference be of Belgium as one of the possibilities as opposed to the detention center in The Hague? I mean, kung titignan niyo po, no, kasi may mga lumabas na videos na maganda-ganda naman ang itsura doon. But why do you think they would want to move to a facility that is just within reach?
I think they want a house, no, where he can stay, and where he can be, with someone who's going to be with him, and of course, in terms of image, it's going to be better for them that he is out of detention, that he is in a house and not in jail. No, that's one of the objectives, I'm sure. No, it's going to be a symbolic victory of sorts for them if they obtain interim release. No, the fear of the victims is that if he's going to be released and he's going to have access to people, the identity of the witnesses and the victims that's going to be disclosed to the defense would be at risk of being disseminated to his underlings or to his allies here in the Philippines. And that would really create a lot of fear, no, among the victims and the witnesses if that happens.
Okay, and given the history of the ICC, ano po yung possibilities pagdating po dun sa mga liberties na maaaring ibigay sa dating Pangulo? Maaari po ba na lagyan din po siya ng GPS, hayaan po siya maglibot-libot kung maaari po sa Belgium? I mean, is that also a possibility, and how far could he go?
Confidential yung undertakings ng defense sa kanilang request for interim release, Gretchen, no? But they disclose some of the undertakings that they're willing to make. Number one, they're willing to undertake that Mr. Duterte is not going to appear in public engagement and to hold public office and to talk to people outside of his family. And also, they undertake for Mr. Duterte to be deprived of any gadget which has internet access and even his mobile phone. No, so those are the conditions that they are part of the conditions that they're willing to agree to, no, to obtain interim release.
Okay,
In other cases, the accused would be prohibited from going outside of the territorial jurisdiction of the host country. He is supposed to surrender his passport and he's supposed to fix his residence in a particular place or a particular housing structure, no, where he can be monitored.
But we do know that the former president has a very strong following, as we've seen in the many rallies abroad. Kung hindi po siya gagawa ng public engagement, hindi po siya magpo-participate, will he be allowed to roam? And what if the followers approach him? I mean, how would that turn out? Yung mga ganong posibilidad.
Yun talaga, it's going to be a violation of their own undertaking because he's not supposed to be talking to other people other than his family, no? So kaya talagang very risky for him to be granted interim release, considering na ang dami-dami niyang followers who would want access to him and who would find ways and means to have access to him, no? So talagang risky talaga for the victims and the witnesses dahil para sa amin, para sa mga biktima, even if mag-impose ng conditions yung ICC, alam mo yung track record ng former president, he violates almost everything. No, he does not recognize the ICC, does not recognize the Constitution. Talagang ganun talaga yung nature niya, no? So talagang even if he's made to agree to certain conditions, those are going to be pieces of paper for him that he can just discard instead.
You mentioned the OPCV is now the official counsel of the victims, the representative for now. Have they started communicating with you, Attorney Gilbert Andres, and other lawyers of the victims? How has that communication been between you and the OPCV?
The OPCV is the temporary counsel for the victims at this point because the chamber is going to make an appointment probably by September on who is going to be the permanent victims counsel. So in the meantime, everyone, all the victims and all lawyers who are representing victims have to course their communications, their submissions, their views and observations through the OPCV. So we coordinate with the OPCV on the submission of our views and observations as legal representatives on the ground of the various victims groups.
And have you already submitted your arguments against this interim release to the OPCV?
We're still waiting for clarification on so many things, like if the conditions, no, if even just the contours of the conditions can be revealed, because those would matter importantly on our submissions, no, because as as NGOs on the ground, as lawyers on the ground, talking to the victims, we know the factual circumstances that would really counter the arguments of Mr. Duterte in his prayer for interim release. So we want to know the conditions that were imposed by the prosecution and the conditions or the undertakings of the defense, because we want to counter them one by one.
You also mentioned a while ago about their manifestation not for the former president not to hold public office. We do know he won as mayor of Davao City. Yung po ba yung pinatutungkulan po nun? Or is it just, parang having a public gathering?
I think yung kanilang undertaking is they will refrain from any public engagement and office, no? So yung office na yan would only refer to him being a mayor, no? Dahil yun lang naman yung public position niya at this point.
So what does that mean? That he will not be actively serving as Davao City mayor?
Yes, he cannot, Gretchen, no? That's one of the conditions that they have undertaken to take if he is given interim release.
Because we do know that he needs to take his oath to be able to get into office and to be able to serve. But another thing that needs to be settled is whether he will be allowed by the DILG to serve as mayor from far away. So meron po ba kayo naririnig when it comes to that? Any talk about that?
Alam mo, Gretchen, it's going to be impossible for him to function as mayor, no? Because as a public official, you have to be on the ground. You have to be meeting your officials on the ground. You have to be signing so many documents, no, every day on the ground. It's really impossible, and you really cannot discharge your functions as a public official from outside of the Philippines. In fact nga, di ba kung nagbibiyahe yung mga public officials natin, they need to designate a temporary OIC, no? Who will discharge their functions. Eh di, hindi talaga po pwede si Mr. Duterte.
And as a final question, in his petition, the lawyer Nicholas Kaufman assured the ICC that the former president will not continue to commit crimes. He used that phrase exactly. Is this an unusual admission of guilt on their part? How do you interpret this?
I think the prosecution could advocate that kind of argument or that view, no? But probably it's just going to be a slip of the tongue for the defense, no? Because I think what they did was just to copy the conditions that are in the rules of the ICC.
Okay.
You have to state that he's not going to commit additional crimes.
Oo nga po. No? If you take a look at the provisions for the grant of an interim release, that is one of those. All right, thank you so much for giving us clarity on this request and the steps moving forward. Do we expect this to be settled before the confirmation of charges?
Yes, by the pace of the ICC judges, I think it's going to be resolved, even the jurisdictional issue, before September 23, Gretchen.
All right, we await that day. In the meantime, maraming salamat, Attorney Joel Butuyan, an ICC-listed lawyer and chairperson of the Center for International Law.
Thanks for having me, Gretchen.
Don't go away. More matters to discuss right after the break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The Department of Health supports the call to lower the speed limit to 30 kilometers per hour in Metro Manila and other areas to help reduce road accidents. Here is the report.
A scar on Marlon Balbuena's left eye is a lasting reminder of a motorcycle crash he survived years ago. Back then, he wasn't wearing a helmet and had two passengers riding with him.
Basag tong aking cheekbone, meron akong mandibular fracture, as well as dito nabasag yung dito ko. 9 hours akong, sabi ko 9 hours akong patay. Parang wala akong malay-malay.
Years later, he got into another accident, this time in a car, after missing a warning sign about road construction.
Simula nung nangyari noon, nagiging mas doble, triple na akong ingat. Very defensive na ako. So, ay masakit. Masakit, mahirap. Binigyan ako ng pangatlo eh. Baka hindi na umabot ng pang-apat.
Each year, around 12,000 Filipinos die from road crashes, according to the Department of Health. That's an average of 33 lives lost per day. Road crashes are also among the leading causes of death among Filipinos aged 5 to 29. Most of those killed are motorcycle riders, followed by pedestrians. The DOH urges the public to drive responsibly, emphasizing that road crashes are preventable.
Kasi pag ikaw ay hindi nag-behave well sa road, ang uwi mo ay sa emergency department. Sana hindi dun sa Oscar, sabi nung asang rider, ospital o karwahe.
But road safety advocates say behavior alone isn't the issue. The Move as One coalition is calling for speed limits in cities to be reduced to 30 kilometers per hour, a standard already in place in many countries.
Sa mga urban areas na nag-adapt ng 30 kilometer speed limit, after 2 years, they found that traffic actually improved. Why? Because slower, safer traffic encouraged more people to walk, to cycle, and to use public transport.
The DOH supports the proposal, but says laws already in place must be strictly enforced. These include the Motorcycle Helmet Act, the Seatbelt Law, and the No Contact Apprehension Program or NCAP.
Maka-lax yung ating implementation. Ang dami ng laws eh. Yung NCAP, maraming nahuhuli for speeding, for yung mga illegal traffic movements. So malaking tulong din yon to decrease road crashes.
The DOH aims to reduce serious injuries and fatalities by half by 2028.
Earlier this month, Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong ordered the strict enforcement of speed limits to curb rising road accidents. Under Magalong's directive, a 20 kph limit will apply in the city's central business district and major roads, while a 30 kph cap will be imposed on inner roads. To boost enforcement, the city is set to acquire speed guns and radar sensors. Magalong urged motorists to comply, emphasizing public safety as the city's top priority. And to talk more about the proposed 30 kilometers per hour speed limit in urban areas, we are joined by Move as One Coalition co-convener Robert C. Jr. Good morning to you. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen, and thank you for inviting me here. And this is a most important topic for all of us.
Good to speak with you after having your son on the show as
Yes.
well. Okay, let's talk about the 30 kph proposal. Why is your group advocating for this, and what is the scope of that? Is it 30 kph across all roads, or is it pointing out to specific roads?
Let me start by bringing up like a common experience of all of us. Why is it so difficult for any of us to cross any pedestrian crossing? Maski saan sa syudad natin, you know, any zebra crossing is still so treacherous. It is because, you know, in all our cities, the major roads are designed as high-speed roads. And this is a serious anomaly. This means that all our major roads are hazardous for what we call vulnerable road users. Cyclists, pedestrians, people who use public transport, especially persons with disability. And because of this, what does this make us? It makes us more motor vehicle dependent because it is dangerous to walk, because it is dangerous to cycle, because it is dangerous to actually go out and use public transport. It makes us rely more on using a private motor vehicle. But why is this so? This is because our road transport officials, mainly MMDA and DPWH, consider that it is more important to have vehicles move faster on urban roads than the lives of Filipinos. So this is my number one beef. When we look at the situation in our cities, we need to actually bring down urban travel speeds of motor vehicles so that we can have more livable, more walkable, less polluted, less noisy cities with safer urban roads for ordinary Filipinos.
So, what are you advocating for specifically? A 30 kph speed limit across all streets?
That's correct, with the exception of tollways and expressways. So if it is a tollway, of course, we would allow uh, that road to actually have a higher speed because it is what is called a limited access highway. It does not allow vulnerable road users. But wherever we have vulnerable road users around the road, the speed limit must be brought down. And this is already, Gretchen, it's already in our law. Republic Act 4136, which is the Transportation and Traffic Code, already mandates that on crowded streets have to have only a 20 kilometer per hour speed limit. And what is a crowded street? This is already defined in a joint memorandum circular. It is a street within a 500 kilometer radius of a school, a market, a church, a mall, government offices, clinics, hospitals, places where people congregate. And so many of our urban areas already fall within this category of being a crowded street. Even streets like Commonwealth, even EDSA. We need to comply with the law. We need to push our national agencies to consider Filipino lives as more valuable than making vehicles move faster.
But aren't these roads, Commonwealth, EDSA, for example, Marcos Highway, aren't they highways to begin with? And you would expect infrastructure to help the transport of commuters, of pedestrians. And in the way that it was constructed, parang pangkotse lang po talaga. Lalong-lalo na, I mean, titignan lang po natin itong Commonwealth at itong EDSA. We have wide lanes for cars and when motorcycles. Is the 30 kph speed limit something realistic for these highways? I mean, we understand the smaller streets, right, where there are lots of people crossing. But when it comes to these highways, isn't that the expected behavior to begin with, to have cars on those roads?
Gretchen, roads need to evolve with the urban land use. There was a time perhaps when EDSA was called Highway 54 and was operated very much like a limited access highway. But today, roads, even like C5, even like EDSA, they are now surrounded by very densely populated areas. And so many people actually move across from one side to the other. There are so many pedestrians on these roads at all hours of the day. These roads need to evolve their use and their design so that they can accommodate the whole range of road users. We cannot consider these roads as now strictly only for motor vehicles. Let me also bring up, an important point. These roads already have very low actual travel speeds. For example, on EDSA, the average travel speed on EDSA is already about 20 kilometers per hour or lower. So, uh, even if we used a 30 kilometer per hour speed limit on EDSA, it would not affect very much the actual travel speed of motorists. But what it will do is it would make uh, these roads safer, more accessible, uh, less noisy, less polluted. We would actually change the character of our city and make our whole urban area more accessible. For one, these days, it is almost impossible for a person with disability to use any of these major roads because halos walang sidewalk, halos walang pedestrian crossing that is at grade. But if we had a 30 kilometer per hour speed limit, you could actually have a series of, for example, signalized pedestrian crossings, which would permit people to cross these major roads safely. And, this is an emerging trend globally. The number one road safety uh, recommendation of the UN, WHO, World Bank is to lower speed limits in urban areas to 30 kilometers per hour or less. But the Philippines has not considered it. It should.
What do you think is the science behind 30 kph? It reminds me of the speed limit in villages. No? Kapag umiikot kayo sa village, nasa 30 kph yan usually, which is really, really slow. I understand it will keep many people safe, but also I want to see how realistic this proposal is. Why 30 kph? What is the science behind that? Why not 40? Why not 50? Or why not 60, like as it is in Commonwealth?
Yeah. At 60 kilometers per hour travel of a vehicle, if it hits a vulnerable road user, the likelihood of death or major injury is very high. Uh, if you lowered it to 30 kilometers per hour, the reduction in fatality, in the severity of the injury, is much less. Perhaps from actually having like more than 50% likelihood of death, it would actually be brought down to 10% or less. So it will save lives. And one thing they found, okay, this is not something which is, so uh, unusual or unreasonable. Already, cities like Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam, the entire nation of Wales, the entire country of Greece has adopted a 30 kilometer per hour speed limit on urban roads. And you know what they found? They found that it brought down uh, the percentage of fatalities down to it brought it down by uh, 28% to 40%. And that is significant. In the Philippines, this would save more than 5,000 lives annually. I think it is worthwhile considering. If we post this together with NCAP on most of our major roads, we would save thousands of lives annually. This is worth trying.
Well, as it is in Commonwealth, the 60 kph speed limit has already improved conditions. No, it has lessened the accidents. Why not keep it at that speed? Tapos 30 kph dun sa mas maliliit na roads where there are more people crossing. I mean, kasi kung isipin ko, there are several approaches to this. Pwedeng dun sa highway mas mabilis, pwedeng dun sa sa loob ng syudad or inner roads, yan ang 30 kph. But you're proposing a blanket speed across all roads. And given the state of our infrastructure, those cities that you mentioned are actually backed by strong transportation infrastructure and other good alternatives, which is via train, which is so many other, yung roads nila are designed for cyclists. But here, that is not the case, obviously, as it is. And given, yung pressures of the urban life that we go through every day, I want to understand, no? How this complements all of that, because we're talking about everybody's interests here.
You know, Gretchen, during the day, it's very difficult for any road to achieve a faster than 30 kilometer per hour vehicle speed. Already, like on Commonwealth, it's not likely during daytime for anyone to achieve a 30 kilometer per hour vehicle travel. The journeys usually are slower than that already. Now, at nighttime is when vehicles actually move very fast because the roads are wide open and freer. But at nighttime is precisely when most of the road crashes happen, where most of the fatalities happen. And this is precisely when we need a lower speed limit in order to save lives. If we save lives, it will be worth doing this. And if we can save 5,000 lives a year, we would be foolish not to do it.
Okay. Thank you so much for weighing in on with us. It is an alarming problem already as it is. Road crashes taking 12,000 lives in a year. It is the fifth top cause of death behind cardiovascular diseases, cancer, diabetes, and pneumonia. And there are 5 out of 32 of those who die daily. They are children, as the data shows. So definitely a lot to look in to those numbers. And thank you so much for explaining those numbers to us. We have Mr. Robert C. Jr., co-convener of the Move as One coalition. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more when Morning Matters returns. Welcome back to Watching Morning Matters here on One News. The bus company involved in the viral assault of a man with a disability along EDSA has issued a statement. This comes after a video circulated online showing a man who is on the autism spectrum being repeatedly punched, kicked, and allegedly electrocuted by fellow passengers inside a public bus. The Transportation Department summoned the bus operator, citing its personnel's failure to protect the victim. As a result, the licenses of the driver and conductor were suspended, and 10 of the company's EDSA busway units were placed under a 30-day preventive suspension. The bus company, however, said the driver and conductor took action on the incident.
Nagpasaklulo sila sa mga naka-duty sa Main Avenue. Base doon sa salaysay, nakiusap naman daw itong naka-duty na Coast Guard, pero hindi nila napababa yung pasahero na nangagat. Siguro sa pag-aakala na kalmado na, pinaabanti na sila. Kaya itinigil na nila sa Buendia. Kinausap ng driver-conductor na tumigil na kasi dadalhin na lang nila sa pulis. Si konduktor na ang nang-awat at nakiusap doon sa mga tao, siya na ang sumalag doon sa kumupuyog para maibaba nila yung tao.
The power crisis in Siquijor is taking a toll on the island's tourism industry. The province, now under a state of calamity, has faced daily rotational brownouts for nearly a month, leading to canceled bookings and dwindling visitor numbers. Several resort operators say potential guests now ask about backup generators before making reservations. Tourist drivers are also affected, reporting fewer trips and clients. Meanwhile, Malacanang on Sunday said power supply has been restored for homes, businesses, and schools following President Bongbong Marcos's directive to address the issue.
Intro nila sa inquiries is na if may generator ba kayo. So, if in case wala kami generator, so for sure, yung guest hindi magbubook dito. Before yung fully booked kami, like we have 8 rooms lang naman. Like ngayon, we have 2 rooms, 3 rooms na lang. Oo. Ang laki. Yes, grabe yung epekto, sir.
Maynilad customers will see a rate hike this month. Consumers using 30 cubic meters of water will pay an additional 0.11 centavos, while those consuming 20 cubic meters will see a 0.05 centavo increase. Meanwhile, there will be a 0.01 centavo adjustment for those using 10 cubic meters. According to the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System, the water rate adjustment is due to changes in foreign currency exchange rates in the global market.
The MWSS confirms a tariff increase for Maynilad customers and a tariff rollback for Manila Water customers.
In sports, Alas Pilipinas made history with a silver medal finish in the 2025 ABC Nations Cup, the Philippines' first finals appearance and podium finish at the Asian level. Alaysa Solomon led with 8 points, while Shaina Natura chipped in 6 off the bench in the team's straight-set loss to host Vietnam. In boxing, Nonito Donaire captured the WBA interim bantamweight crown via unanimous technical decision after an accidental headbutt in the 9th round forced his bout with Chile's Andres Campos to end early. Meanwhile, Alex Yala bounced back from a quarterfinal exit at the Ilkley Open with a gritty 3-set win over France's Varvara Gracheva in the Nottingham Open qualifiers. The 20-year-old now faces Romania's Anca Ciudoni for a main draw slot after logging over 3.5 hours on court in back-to-back matches. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. A happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there who celebrated yesterday. And magandang pasukan po for those who are going to school this school year 2025 to 2026. Let's go ahead and make the day and the year matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. We are One News, all sides, all the time.